Sprout trying to come back. Epicormic sprouting. Little mixture in the conifer forest here of trees that were completely burned out, trees that continue to decline and ground out, and some great trees that obstacle. See what's going on here. Got some damage to a bridge. We're gonna have to find another way around. Pretty sugar pine back there. That one behind the, looks like maybe a white fir. Could be a Doug. Hard to tell from here. But yeah, mixed conifer forest, and we got this riparian area right here, obviously with the amount of water coming through, but you can tell by the vegetation type. Beautiful. All right, let's find another way to get to our tree. And we'll follow this high voltage line. It's a 115 to 220 kV. It's transmission. And go check out this individual's work and see if we need to delist this tree. All right, we are here at a very large Douglas fir. One of the larger trees in the area here in Big Creek on this particular mountainside. A lot of habitat. You can hear running water. We want to be careful about how we're impacting the environment here, signing up tree work, doing our risk mitigations. This tree, over 48 dBH diameter at breast height, very large. Has some little bit of a basal wound, you could call it, here at the base. Some cambium damage to probably 1 or 2 quadrants of the lower tree bowl from a recent wildfire, creek fire. And you can see this polypore type spore coming up at the base of the tree here. Try to diagnose exactly what this is, but it's not a good sign for the tree. It's attacking this area that's been damaged by the wildfire. So you can see on this side of the tree, there's actually not much damage to the cambium. Maybe on the extreme lower part, some of the root crown has been damaged. But over here on the more northern side, where the fire was coming up this hill, it took a little bit more significant burn. Douglas fir responds a lot better to wildfires than most conifers. This is a tree that has the ability to snap back from wildfire, but seeing signs like this, conchs and mushrooms and fungus growing on the tree isn't a good sign. Over here, again, not very significant for the cambium damage on the lower tree bowl. It only went up about 15 to 20 feet on that northern side. But it is a very old tree. Might not have a ton of vigor left in it to fight off disease and things that may be creeping in. You have some dieback in the lower canopy here. But I did get some photos when I was outside walking up the hill that showed that the live canopy crown, it looked pretty good. Pretty green all the way to the top. Didn't see any major decline in the crown. And overall, this tree's probably got a lot of life left in it, but we are concerned with the fungus growing on the side of the tree. So we'll get a good diagnosis of what that spore is, polypore growing on the side of it, and see how that affects these Douglas firs and make a recommendation after that. All right, this is a video to help identify cambium kill in the lower tree bowl in a cedar specifically for right now. We have an incense cedar, approximately 30 dBH. I'd have to look again. And it has some lower tree bowl damage from a recent wildfire, creek fire. Okay, we're in District 50, Shaver, Huntington area, and we're on a high voltage line. So we got to take into consideration our max sway when we're doing our tree height factors. But this was 130 foot on the slope distance to that line. The tree was 110 feet tall. So without including the max sway factor, the tree has no strike potential at all. With the max sway factor, let's see, 130 to 1. Is that 30? Approximately 30 foot of the top of the tree could hit if it's fully maxed out. All right, I'd have to do that math again. But let's get into the damage here. So when we're looking for actual cambium kill in this species that is very resilient to wildfire damage, we're going to be looking for smoothed out surfaces. Typically it'd be on the downhill side where the fire was coming up the hill and just continuing that radiant heat and burning through the bark. As you can see, some of it has happened here. This area here was extremely hot. on this side of the tree. We are kind of more on the downhill slope. And if you dig into this, you can see this is probably got some cambium damage, potentially cambium kill on this lower quadrant here. There's going to be 4 quadrants to the tree, so you break it up into 4 sections. You can either do that in cardinal directions or using the terrain, the slope. So because we are on a significant slope here, let's go ahead and use the slope factor instead of using cardinal. Little bit easier to do when you do have a slope. So let's say this is on the this would be on the mid slope. So we'll have an upslope, 2 mid-slope sides, kind of a northern and a southern, and then a southern slope. So this is close to the downslope and northern side slope area that has the most significant amount of damage. You can see those areas that are still extremely rough to the upper slope side. You just get in a little bit and you can start seeing the color come out there. So most likely not any cambium kill. There may be slight cambium damage, but no cambium kill factor on that quadrant. This quadrant, might be safe to say that we see this smoothed out surface with a lot of damage to the bark. We could call this 1 quadrant of cambium kill, definite cambium damage, potential cambium kill. We'd have to really get in and do a basal check to see how the cambium's looking in there. But chances are it's dried out, and it's going to be a stress factor on this side of the tree. On the actual line side of the tree, you can see a significant change. This is the line side that like a 50-50 char on this. Definitely no cambium kill, minor cambium damage on the northern side slope, almost 0 cambium damage on the lower slope area. So this is our second quadrant, and I would say minimal cambium damage, no cambium kill. On the third quadrant, the other side facing on the southern area, still kind of a 50-50 looking burn. If you're looking down all the way down to the root crown and lower tree bowl, you could see a little bit of burn through where this got exposed a little bit down here. So once again, you're looking for smoothed out surfaces where the wildfire continued to burn up, maybe from radiant heat from other things that were on fire, buildings, trees, etc. Significant amount of heat source that continues to burn through this this tree bark on the cedar that is very resilient to wildfire. So not a significant amount of burn. You don't have to go very far at all to start getting some good color here. We do have some insect hits that are coming in. That's something to consider. We'll have to take another look at the initial risk assessment. These may be new hits, but don't see any major. There is some frass here, but yeah, no major insect activity. I don't see any pitch tubing or anything, which typically doesn't happen a lot with these types of species. With the incense cedar, a little bit more prone to happen in the firs. Some of the Doug firs I've seen have got hit a little bit, but a lot in the pine, definitely. All right. So this side, this southern side quadrant, we're going to say minimal cambium damage, no cambium kill. So far that is 2 quadrants of no cambium kill, 1 quadrant of minor cambium kill, potentially just cambium damage. And the final 4th side, you can see that there's some type of basal wound that was here. It's a little hard to see because it's been charred out. So the wildfire did have some a little bit more impact, being able to bypass some of this stronger bark on the outside and get a little bit closer into the tree here. You don't have to go very far though before you start seeing that it is oozing. You're going to get into some color here real quick. This is cambium damage, but it's hard to qualify this as cambium kill. These tree species are extremely resilient. So I would say overall, looking at this tree, potentially we have 2 quadrants of cambium damage and 2 quadrants of minimal damage, maybe 1 quadrant of cambium kill. So we got 3 quadrants, no cambium kill, 1 quadrant of cambium kill. There may be no cambium kill in this tree. I don't want to damage it further by doing a basal check on it, where you would actually, the old method would be to get a hatchet and dig into the tree and peel off a piece of the cambium. We try not to do that anymore because it opens up the tree further, makes it more susceptible to disease and rot and insects, that type of activity. So a nice little pocket knife where you can just lightly dig in and see what's going on in the cambium is a good way to perform your level 2 risk assessment. You look up the tree, it does have 50% of the live crown has been killed by the wildfire. That lower scaffold branches, these potentially will not come back. I don't see any epicarmic sprouting or anything that would be indicative of the tree showing that it's extremely stressed out, kind of a survival mechanism, where you may see some sprouts coming out at the base of the tree. You don't see any of that. So this tree, even though it did sustain a decent amount of char, if you look up at the top, it's still got a vibrant green top. That live crown, the ratio is probably 50%, maybe less, but it's the most important part of the tree. It's the part that's getting the most sunlight and using for photosynthesis up here, and we just see that really it's still pretty green, lush canopy. I don't see any dieback in that, working from the top of the tree down, which would be something we'd be looking at to call this dieback. I would not call this tree dieback, but I would call it 50% crown loss, potentially greater. But I have seen these trees, these incense cedars, with only 10 to 15% of their crown left after a wildfire, and they can live for quite some time. So this may be a tree that we would consider almost like a case study, where we continue to monitor this tree with all the wildfire and everything that's happened in this area. We want to minimize our impact to the environment. And a tree like this that technically doesn't even have 1 times the height factor, if you're not taking into account max sway. If that tree fell right now, it could not impact those power lines because we don't have any wind. We don't have anything that's forcing these lines to max sway out. We are almost mid-span, so that potential for max sway could be here during a major windstorm. We are kind of in a valley. This is kind of a front line of the tree forest right here that you could call this potentially an edge tree. So it could get some winds, but if and when it does, it's going to be pushing the tree away from the power lines. So you can see the the tower there. Yeah, we're about mid-span. So all things to consider, but with this tree species and the limiting factors, defects and wildfire damage to this tree, I would say let's go ahead and flip this from risk mitigate to a subject point and continue to monitor it and put some eyes on it when we come through on our next DRI patrol and potentially a combo or HTMP pass. If you look at its little brother to the side here, this one is showing a little bit more stress factors in the live crown, a little bit more browned out, so not as mature of a tree, and definitely took some damage down there as well. That tree is not a factor, being that it does not pose any strike potential to the infrastructure. So I'll be making a recommendation to turn this mitigate tree, a P2, into a P3. You can see it's swaying nice and good, real light winds, but it's got a lot of movement to it still, and I think this tree will continue to stand for a very long time. All right, data tree consulting team. We're under a high voltage line, 115 to 220 kV is the amount of power that fluctuates through this big line. You can see, got a nice swath opened up here. Wildfire came through, eliminated a lot of the trees that were posing strike potential to this high voltage line after they came through, and it removed everything that was dead. You can see there's still some brownout going on, not too far outside the corridor. Most of the trees that are standing and do have strike potential are green. And that takes us to this location here. Applying our QAQC method to this current program that I'm involved in, helping the utility, and going back, taking a look at some trees that have been inspected. These assessors are certified arborists. Some of them may be track qualified, some of them may have experience on wildfires. It's kind of a mixed bag. My team, we did not patrol this line initially, but I'm coming back and doing some QC on some tree points, filtered out, did a query on some of the larger conifer species, and trying to make sure that these guys are applying the right defects when they're listing it in their risk assessment. Really just trying to calibrate this team and make sure that they understand the software and what these terms are supposed to mean. So the larger one on the left is a Jeffrey pine. Nice big beautiful tree. It's about 145 foot, and the one on the right, there's a tree kind of blocking it right now, but the one on the right is the tree that was listed for a removal. The risk assessment said that it posed a high enough risk to this high voltage line that they wanted to remove the whole tree. Upon further review, I'm disagreeing with this risk assessment, and I'm asking it to be reassessed and delisted to a subject tree for now. It does have some wildfire damage to the lower tree bowl, but there is no significant damage. So it's a Douglas fir. Let's get a little bit closer and take a good look at this tree. So Douglas firs are very resilient to wildfire, similar to the incense cedar. They do pretty well in wildfire. If they don't have a significant amount of damage to the tree trunk, the lower tree bowl, if there's not a lot of scorching. So we would take a look at this lower part of the tree and look at all four quadrants, see how much cambium damage or cambium kill we have on the lower section of this tree. And minimal damage and no cambium kill. So get out your pocket knife, be fairly gentle, and just dig through the bark a little bit until you can get to that cambium and see if you have a nice flexible, pliable, wet cambium live cell layer under this bark. Now it looks, you know, maybe to the untrained eye like it got scorched and this tree's maybe suffered too much damage and the tree should come out. But it's very superficial. It really only goes just a little bit into the bark. So you'd be looking for real flat areas in the bark, and we just don't see that with this. The bark still has a lot of texture, and there's no single quadrant, one of the 4 quadrants on this tree, that has any cambium kill at all. We have some bleeding resinous activity. I don't see any significant insect activity at all, which is a good sign for this tree that it's still got a lot of vigor in it. Now you can see some separation in the bark here where the live cambium is a little bit exposed right there. That is not shear plane cracking in the trunk, which is what this assessor thought he was seeing and listed in his tree risk assessment, but that's not shear plane cracking. That is just a little bit of separation in the bark. Probably, you know, maybe the tree swelled a little bit. But if we look up, it's got a nice green, healthy canopy up there. So this lower area where we see these dead branches, that is just a very small portion of the tree. Try to get a better vantage point for you here. But I'd say we have approximately 80%, over 75% of healthy live crown still on this tree, with just the lower portion of this tree bowl that's been affected by the wildfire, but does not pose a significant factor for this type of species, for Douglas fir. This tree is very resilient. There's not enough damage to the live cell wall, the cambium layer, to put this tree into decline to make it a high risk for the target, the high voltage line here. So we're going to back this down. We're going to reassess the tree. We're going to update the likelihood of impact. That was an overlist. These are a little bit more subjective in their measurements, but we did all of our objective measurements of the tree height, the slope distance to the line, and the likelihood of this tree impacting the line is not very likely, which is what was listed. So we backed that down just a little bit, and lowering the score on that, we've delisted the crack, and we've also delisted that this was said to have had dieback in the crown. Now, when we're looking at dieback specifically, we're going to look from the top of the crown down in. You should see signs of dead branches creeping from the outside in, and we just don't see that. We do see some damage to the lower portion, so I won't delist dead branches, which was listed, but we will remove the dieback because the top of the tree is very healthy. Minimal impact. So it looks like we're going to save a tree here and just kind of put this on our watch list, kind of make a case study out of it, take some of this information to some of these younger guys in the industry, some of these babies that need a little bit more guidance and support, and talk to them about species and the impacts of wildfire on these species, and make sure we're not doing any overlisting. think I see my tree. It's got that orange band at the base. Got a green top on it. That looks like her. Very majestic area. Habitat, riparian zone. Wildfire came through and scorched this area pretty good, but it's snapping back. It's still got some life in here. You can see the response in green around. A lot of the black oaks and stuff are trying to come in. I saw some tracks right behind me, so I'm being a little bit quiet. Just seeing what kind of critters are living out here. We definitely have bear and big cats, mountain lions in these neck of the woods. We have black bear, but if they're hungry enough, they can be an issue, or if they have cubs around, they can be an issue. So I am solo mission today, and probably a good 25-minute hike through this forest to get down to my truck. Trying to make sure I don't step on any beehives, wasp nests on the ground, or anything like that. But I do have some bear spray, and I hope I don't have to use it. All right, let's go check this tree out. Data tree consulting. Here is a great example of beetle hits on a tree. Looks like we got a kind of hard to tell without the canopy on it. Could be a Doug fir. Lots of frass down here. We got some pitch tubing and bleeding coming out of the tree bowl all over the place. Lots of hits, lots of frass. This is all insect activity. You see all that bleeding, all that tubing. Lots of frass on the backside. It's that real fine ground up wood from the insects burrowing into the tree. This tree is a goner. But these are activities you'll be looking for in your live trees when you're doing your risk assessments. If you have an excessive amount of beetle hits, pitch tubing, and frass present, that tree is getting ready to go. Signing out.